Good morning. It is July 29th, and we are starting our AM Lockport Toastmasters meeting. It is worth getting up for. It may take a couple extra cups of coffee and one last snap of the snooze button, but you can be here, and you could be here on time. We have an interesting meeting today. I am interested to see how it goes with this theme. And we're going to start off with an inspiration. Our inspiration comes to us this morning from Jackie Kenny.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. I looked around and found that I was very inspired this week. And I'm going to invoke the name of Simone Biles. She is more than amazing, and not just for her athletic prowess. This young woman came from two people who were addicted and could not raise their own children. They were put in foster care. She was adopted by her grandparents. She suffered sexual abuse in her life as a gymnast and overcame that, testified against the abuser. She has 30 Olympic and world champion medals. She conducts herself with class and grace. I have never heard her whine about her background or her circumstances. And this week we saw her pull herself out of international competition to protect her mental and emotional health. And I can't think of anything more admirable or inspiring than that. So let's all hold her up as an example this week. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Jackie. We also open our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, which if you could mute yourselves, I see a lot of people unmuted, so that we don't have double feedback, I will just lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I said, I already said good morning. I need extra coffee this morning. I'm a little tired, but I'm going to go ahead and just give a toast and just say, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you everyone for being a part of our organization. And thank you for just basically being wonderful people. To all of us. Our Toastmaster for today has chosen an interesting theme, but I'll leave it to him to talk about it, I guess. Not a good member, well-spoken member, Dave Jones. Dave Jones is Toastmaster today.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters, and it doesn't look like we have any guests. So Toastmasters, I believe for all of us, was originally public speaking. And then once, especially this group, I've found, we've learned that it's more about leadership. It's not just about public speaking, it's about helping others, it's about being in service to others. One of the better quotes I've come across from an area director is, if service is beneath you, then leadership is beyond you. And that's kind of what I've strived to be as a Toastmaster. And I've always said, I actually did a speech here in Charlotte about the one person. And that's kind of my theme for Toastmasters. As a Toastmaster, as a treasurer, I wanted to make sure the club was financially stable for that one person. As president, I make sure the club is always open and ready to go for that one person. And that one person is the person today who's going to work, and they're going to give a presentation or speech at work, and they're going to flop. They're going to be embarrassed in front of their boss and coworkers, and they're going to Google Toastmasters as soon as they get home because they want to fix it. And as a club and as club members, we need to be open and supportive to help them because they're in a panic mode. And I've always said the one person, but here at Queen City, we actually have a name for him. It's Jamie. He's our newest member. And that's exactly what happened to Jamie a few weeks ago. He had a presentation on a Friday afternoon. He flopped. And that Tuesday, he was at Toastmasters and he came in person. So I was very happy that we were doing our hybrid. So he walked in the door and he joined on the spot. And every week he's done a different role. Coming up, he's going to be Table Topics Master. So that's the one person that I strive to be a Toastmaster and an officer for is Jamie, and that one person. So throughout the morning, I'm going to ask each of you what Toastmasters means to you. But we're first going to start with our word master, Larry McKenzie. Tell us about your word of the day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. Today, I am going to challenge each and every one of you to use a word which is not a common word, but it does have a meaning that we all know. I'm putting it in.
You're muted.
He muted himself.
Yes, I muted myself. As Phil would say, I muted myself. I meant to put the word in. The word is encomium, and it is a noun and is a speech or piece of writing that praises someone or something highly, which is very common with something that we do within Toastmasters when we give our evaluations. So an example of encomium in a sentence: Adlai Stevenson gave a moving encomium about Eleanor Roosevelt to the United Nations. Or here's another: the mayor praised the first responders in his encomium. So the word of the day, please use it during table topics or anywhere else throughout the meeting: encomium. Back to you, David.
Thank you, Mr. Wordmaster. And I would like to give an encomium to Larry for stepping up last minute and being the word master, because now I'd like to introduce you to our master, Larry McKenzie.
Dun, 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 dun. Today, I will be your master. Now, what is the role of an master? I think we all should know that because I don't think there's any new Toastmasters here. So as the master, I will be counting all the ums, ahs, pregnant pauses, and any use of filler words that we should not be using. Even though it's 7 o'clock in the morning, we should all be wide awake when we speak. Right, Thomas? Yes, Thomas said he needed a second cup of coffee, but he's still on number 1. So I will be using my handy dandy pen right here and keeping track and report when I am called upon later in the meeting. Thank you. Back to you, David, again.
Thank you, Mr. Master. And you want to go for a trifecta like Phil because our grammarian is not here. So while you're keeping track of words, Larry, would you like to maybe be our grammarian? Then we'll have you 3 in a row.
Well, thank you for the encomium, which was a praise of taking on another job. As a grammarian today, this is my favorite role in Toastmasters. As grammarian, I will report on exceptional and poor uses of grammar. And with your exceptional uses of grammar, you should probably be using encomium as one of those words or a word similar to that. I will keep track and report upon when I am called at the end of the meeting, I think. Back to you, Tom. Or no, David, back to you.
Thank you for taking care of all 3 of those roles. And next up is Toastmaster Jen. She is going to be our quote master. And Jen, I was wondering what drew you to Toastmasters? Why did you join originally?
You know, it was not to make speeches, actually. I joined because I just wanted to meet people. I didn't know a lot of people in the area, and I had moved back recently. Was hoping to meet some fun people, which I did. So that is another great reason to join Toastmasters. But I do have a quote for you today as well. And of course, you must give encomium and an encomium to our original founder, not of our club, but of Toastmasters in general, Ralph Smedley. And what better person to quote than him today? As David had alluded to earlier, that's not part of the quote. While most of us may have entered Toastmasters to learn to make speeches, that benefit is but the beginning of the good which may come to us and the good which we may do for mankind. That I thought was a great quote from Ralph Smedley. He has plenty out there. So another one that I would like to share is understanding comes through communication, and through communication, we find the way to peace. Now, I'm personally taking a training this week that is very linguistics based. And I think that the people in that training would very much appreciate that quote. And I might share it with them today, because our words are much more important than you can ever imagine. That is what I have learned this week. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Toastmaster Jen. Appreciate that. And next up is our jester, President Tom. And Tom, what first got you into Toastmasters?
I first got into Toastmasters when I was trying my own business. I was not as successful as I wanted to be, and I thought maybe being a little more slick in my conversations and not presenting an encolquium to the potential customer would be a good idea. I learned a little bit better way to approach that, and it actually helped me very much with my interviews for getting a new job in dishing, removing my own attempt at a business. Attempt would be a good way to say it. But the joke for today is a group interactive. If you ever have to give a speech to a bunch of people and you're going to want group interaction, this is a good one to give because it causes everyone to have to interact. So if everyone wants to, just like with the Quizmaster time at the end of the meeting, unmute, I'll tell you what the 3 responses are. And when you hear the keyword, you just give the response. And you can act and ham it up a little bit if you think that the response should be in a different emotion or in a different reactive state. The first one is when I talk about a caveman Ugg, everyone will say his last name because Ugg's last name is Lee. So caveman Ugg, well, that was terrible.
Lee.
Caveman Ugg.
Lee.
All right. Then there's second one is a bird, a very fast bird, like the Roadrunner, called the Meneke. And all you have to do is repeat its name twice. Meneke, Meneke, like that. So when I say the Meneke, everyone goes,
Meneke,
Meneke,
Meneke.
Meneke.
there we go. We're getting there. See how it brings out interaction? All right. So then his friend, the loon. Well, the loon, he loves sugar. So when I say loon, you go, sugar. So the loon.
Sugar.
Okay. So the story begins with a caveman named Ugg
Lee.
Lee.
and his search for the most delicious meat on the whole planet, which was the Meneke.
Meneke, Meneke.
Meneke, Meneke.
Now, it was too fast for him. He couldn't catch it. So one day, he noticed something. He noticed that it was good friends with the loon.
Sugar.
Sugar.
Right. And the Meneke
Meneke, Meneke.
Meneke, Meneke.
would hang around the loon. And would hang around the loon.
Sugar.
Loony.
And that is, and as you're saying, that was the favorite food. So he was actually credited with inventing powdered sugar because he powdered it up and he went up and he threw it all over the loon.
Sugar.
So our caveman Ugg
Lee.
hid. And then along came the Meneke,
Meneke, Meneke.
played with his friend the loon,
Sugar.
and was slow enough that he was able to jump out and hit the Meneke on the head.
Meneke, Meneke.
Well, and so he got a wonderful meal. Well, what's the rule? What is the moral of the whole story? You can sing the second verse with me. It takes a loon covered in sugar to help the Menikees slow down. The Menikees slow down. The Menikees slow down. Ooh, it takes a loon covered in sugar to help the Menikees slow down. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Mr. Toastmaster.
Way too early in the morning.
Thank you, Toastmaster Tom, for that. I appreciate it. Kind of reminds me of the ad libs as a kid in the car. Have to fill out the little words and do it all. Unfortunately, our timer is not here, so I will step up and be the timer as well. I know there's a couple don't have roles, but we need them for Dr. Gerald to do some table topics. So I will be the timer of the day, and I believe all the speeches are 5 to 7 minutes. And let me just make sure I have my colors in here. Yes, so we will do green, yellow, and red. And so we're good for the timer. And I'm going to get rid of that in a second. And next up is our tech and gesture master, Toastmaster Moklis. And I think I know why you've joined Toastmasters, but if you could refresh our memory of why you got involved.
Why did I join Toastmaster is a good question. How do you go to Carnegie Hall?
Practice.
Practice. That's the only reason I am at the Toastmasters. My role today is gesture master and tech master. I'm sure I can do the gesture one pretty well. I think Tom did a good job of moving his hands and face. I think everybody is pretty active. If you stay still on the screen, it becomes like a photograph. So if you move a little bit, smile a little bit, or do some expression, it makes the meeting more live. And of course, I always support doing clapping before an introduction or after the speech. That's for gesture. Technical is, of course, background. I love Kate's Van Gogh background because that takes us to whole lots of memories of Van Gogh painting. That will be my role, Mr. Toastmaster of the day, David Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Moklis. Now, this is mostly, especially for Tom, as president of the club, as you all start transitioning to hybrid, it is very difficult. There are times where you might have 2 people in person and 20 on Zoom. And as a Toastmaster, you just got to keep on keeping on. I mean, there's literally been meetings where I would have more guests than members. There were times where the meeting was over and I almost cried. I'm 55 years old and I almost cried because it just seemed like a hot mess. But I always remember that one person showing up. And that's who we have to be working towards, is being there for that one person. Even if there's just 2 people in the room, you always have to be available for that one person. And with that, I will turn it over to our quiz master, Margot Sue Bittner.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. And I think we actually could give our encomium to Toastmasters itself and the role it plays in our lives, since that seems to be your theme. So I will be listening today, and at the end of the meeting, I'm only going to come up with 3 or 5 questions. I'm not going to give you all these chances to get the answers right. I'm just going to have a few brief questions. Yeah, I know, I'm stubborn, and that's how I do things. So I'm looking forward to listening to the speeches, the table topics, everything else. And you never know which kind of trivia I will be coming up, because after all, my employee Dave isn't here today. So somebody has to take his place, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Toastmaster Margot. And next up is going to be our table topics master. And I'm interested to find out why you joined Dr. Gerald.
Morning, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. I joined back in the day to sharpen my skills, much like Moklis, practice, but also to improve my spontaneous speaking at meetings. Sometimes the words would come out all crooked and the good thought that I had would be lost in the stumbling, so that has improved. I do have 3 questions today, and I'm hoping that I have some amazing answers. And I hope that we can shower encomium all over these table topics participants today. My first question today is for Jackie, I know you had a role already, but I'm going to give you another one since we are short today.
Sure.
Dave Licata in Hawaii once said, to get everything out of Toastmasters, you'll never get out of Toastmasters. What do you still get out of Toastmasters, Jackie?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. I still get a great deal, even though I joined in 2004, and I've been in every officer position, and I've been a district officer as well. There is still so much to learn. I feel like I learn at least one new thing in each meeting. There would be an encomium of speeches praising someone or explaining something technical or talking about a sport. It always teaches me something. Maybe what I learn is the style from another Toastmaster who's never given a speech before. And they bring things to us in a whole new way, from a new direction and a new perspective. I don't think you ever want to get out of Toastmasters, and I'm always sorry when someone leaves the group. Sometimes it's for a job opportunity. I don't know why some other people leave. Perhaps they get discouraged at some point. I think it's absolutely true. And I think Harry Carlson was actually the first person to use that figure of speech, that if you are going to get everything you can out of Toastmasters, you will never get out of Toastmasters. I don't think I will ever get out of Toastmasters. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate the quote reference change as well. Our second participant today will be Sylvia, if she's up for it. What is your favorite thing about Toastmasters and how does it enhance your life? Sylvia.
Well, Mr. Table Topics, that is a very interesting question. How does it affect my life? What I get out of Toastmasters is to practice, 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 as Mokus would say, and off the cuff speeches, just like Table Topics. I need that, and that's one of the reasons I did join Toastmasters. It's to think quick on my feet when I was doing short presentations to people I work with, and because they like firing questions at you one after another. Why? Well, why did you do it this way? Why is this happening? What's this number mean? Because I work with numbers, what's that mean? And I had to think quickly and explain real short and clearly why the things were adding up to what they were adding, or the numbers bottom line was a negative or a positive. It was a little stressful, actually. Now even with human resource, with COVID and everything, it's stressful too. So the things, life, what I get from Toastmasters is being used every day, one way or another. It's either at work or at home. And quantum speeches or presentations is really, I guess, my way of life right now. It's until I retire, hopefully. I won't be asked all these questions. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics, for the opportunity of speaking today.
Thank you, Sylvia. My third participant today, if I can get him to do it, we'll see. Eric, are you available to do table topics today and able?
Oh, why not? Go ahead, Gerald.
Okay. So your question, Eric, is Toastmaster speeches can be inspiring and motivational. What motivates and inspires you, Eric?
Oh, Mr. Table Topics Master, thank you for that interesting question. I need to ask, what is the word of the day again?
Encomium.
Encomium. Okay. That's a tongue twister, but I like it. Thanks, Larry. But what inspired me the most with speeches is that it comes from the heart. They're telling a personal story. And that's how I was been doing, is like writing a book, is like writing stories that how it reflects you. And Toastmasters has helped shape me the most because when I started doing Toastmasters, was very challenging for me, but as time went on and on, I got more comfortable out of my comfort zone and continue practicing my speeches, and I can speak more better in front of people, which I am so grateful for because public speaking was not my forte at first, but then as I came in, I felt comfortable in my surroundings, in my peer review, and moving forward helped me, especially with this job that I'm doing. And it's been an acronym of this club and being as an officer, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Eric. Can I have a word master report from Larry?
Thank you very much, Dr. Gerald. This morning, our word, encomium, giving praise, was used. Actually, what I'll do is I'll give a report to let you know that Jackie used it 1.5 times. Sylvia did not use it, but Eric used it sort of twice, but I'll give him 2 halves because he almost pronounced it correctly the first time and was way off base, but I know what he meant on the second one. So his 2 halves might equal 1. And so Jackie would win with 1.5. Sylvia, I did not hear unless she did, and I missed it. Back to you.
Thank you, Larry. And could I have a timers report, Mr. David Jones?
Yes, sir. We have Jackie at 1 minute and 40 seconds, Sylvia right at 2 minutes, and Eric right at 1:30.
Thank you so much. So at this point, if I could get a poll put up there and we could take a vote. Obviously, Silver didn't use the word of the day. Did all of our table topics participants qualify, Mr. Timer?
I believe they did, yes, sir.
Okay. So Sylvia would be the only one that's not eligible. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
That's me. Thank you very much. Good table topics and relevant to today's theme. And let me do this. Now we're going to get into the fun part, the speeches, and we're going to start with Carol Ann, and I believe her evaluator is Phil Russell. Phil, do you have her information for the speech?
Yes, Mr. Toastmaster. Let me look it up here. Sylvia had texted it to me. And Carol is working in the Connect with Storytelling. And the title is, oh, I don't have the title. I'll give you have the title, Mr. Toastmaster?
I do.
All right. And I believe it's 5 to 7 minutes. I don't have that, but you said it would be 5 to 7 minutes. And I have the evaluation form in front of me. And I will be evaluating Carol on her storytelling speech. And you have the title, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Toastmaster Phil. And please welcome Carol Ann to do her speech entitled, I liked, not loved, New York City. Carol Ann.
It was in July of 1965, shortly after I graduated from high school. that my mother, family friend Connie, and I decided to go to New York City to visit another friend named Nancy who lived in Brooklyn. It started out with a bit of difficulty because the airport runway in Buffalo that had to be used for our flight was under some sort of construction. So we had to be to Buffalo Airport very early, and then they bused us to Rochester. So we flew out of Rochester and arrived in New York. When we were at the baggage claim area, we waited for quite a while. Our luggage didn't show up. Upon investigation, we found out that our luggage had remained on the bus in Rochester. But there was an advantage to this because the airline then had to bring it to our friend's apartment in Brooklyn. Her apartment was a 45-minute subway ride away from Grand Central. And the morning after we got there, we boarded the subway, and it wasn't very crowded at her stop. But once we got downtown, there was somebody right in front of my face standing. I admit to being claustrophobic. It wasn't a fun time. But we did go to the Empire State Building, which was very impressive when you get to the top and look around the city. And it also brought to mind the movie An Affair to Remember with Cary Grant standing at the top of the Empire State Building, waiting for Deborah Kerr to get off the elevator, and she never did. We did go to Radio City Music Hall and saw the Rockettes, most impressive. And the movie showing at the time was The Sandpiper. And many of you might remember that The Shadow of Your Smile came from that movie. And it starred the famous couple of the era, Richard Burton and Liz Taylor. The World's Fair was in New York. So we took a train out to the area where that was. I remember riding on a Ferris wheel. It was put out by the US Royal Tires. It was a giant tire with little red seats. And actually, we brought a little model of it home, like it was a little toy of it to my father, because I knew he would enjoy seeing that. My daughter, who is a big Disney fan, said A Small World was at that World's Fair. And for some reason, well, I wasn't feeling real well. All these transporting things, I kind of was motion sickness or whatever. I wasn't at my feeling the best when I was there, because she said A Small World appeared at that. You must have seen that. And I said, no, I don't think I did, because everyone knows once you've seen A Small World, that song is in your brain forever. And we also went to the UN. I don't remember a lot about the being there, but I know it was very interesting. And we there was another kind of disadvantage at the time. There was a water shortage, so restaurants did not give us water, and you were advised to take very short showers. But as we strolled through the canyons of concrete, looking up as all tourists do, so impressive of the tall buildings. However, it wasn't until 1973 that the Twin Towers were built and completed. So I never got to see the Twin Towers. And if I ever go back to New York City, tragically, I still will never see the Twin Towers. So with some positive and negatives, that is why I said that I liked New York City, but didn't love it. But we had a very pleasant plane ride back to Buffalo, where we were able to land then. And it just took 41 minutes. I know the sun was shining. And so haven't been back, but New York City does have a lot to offer, Mr. Toastmaster.
You are
And I was on mute and I just had some of the best lines ever. Thank you, Toastmaster Carol Ann. Oh, we're doing good on time, so I'm going to tell my story as to why I joined Toastmaster. I was kind of in a panic mode also, but I hadn't done my failure yet. It was preemptive. I'm an insurance auditor, and a couple of years ago I was elected on the board of what's called the Insurance Auditors Association Southeast. We represent 9 states. And I was at our conference, and we're in a hotel conference room, hundreds of people in there. I was one of them, and they made me secretary. I figured that would be a safe role, but they told me the progression was secretary, president-elect, president. And as I sat in the meeting, I noticed that the president-elect and the president were up on stage presenting, giving speeches, and I was in a panic because I knew I had exactly 52 meetings at Toastmasters until I had to be on stage. So that meeting was over on a Tuesday, and Tuesday night I was at Toastmasters. Fortunately, COVID came for me because that gave me 104 meetings because it was paused for a year. And I'm now the president-elect, and we're looking forward to our meeting next year, but I will be prepared. So that was my panic moment, but I knew I had time to get there. So now I'm ready to give that speech. And next up is going to be Kate giving a speech, and we're going to have Toastmaster Tom introduce her.
Good morning. Here we are, the dark skies. Katie started last week talking about how light pollution and her trip, she got a great appreciation and gave us a lot of facts about the dark skies. This week, she does a deeper dive into what that means and how that impacts us. In her part 2 speech of Starry Nights, that's 5 to 7 minutes for the timer. And this is part 2. And hopefully she takes some of my advice from part 1 and incorporates it into her speech. Katie Orr.
For 3 billion years, life on Earth existed in a rhythm of light and dark, created solely by the illumination of the sun and the moon and the stars. Now, artificial lights overpower the darkness, and our cities glow at night, disrupting that natural day-night rhythm. The negative effects may seem intangible, but growing evidence links that brightening night sky directly to measurable negative impacts, including disrupting wildlife, affecting our human health, our safety, and crime, and 3, affecting energy consumption, and it's become wasteful. Number 1, our wildlife. Artificial light at night has deadly effects on mammals, birds, amphibians, insects, and plants. They depend on Earth's daily cycle of light and dark for reproduction, nourishment, sleep, and protection from predators. Many animals are nocturnal and active at night, and light pollution radically alters their nighttime environment by turning night into dark. According to research scientist Christopher Kaiba, the introduction of artificial light probably represents the most drastic overall change human beings have made to our environment. He explains how predators use light to hunt and prey species use darkness as cover. Near cities, skies are sometimes thousands of times brighter than they were 200 years ago. And we are only now beginning to learn the drastic effects of this on our ecology. For example, sea turtles live in the ocean, but they hatch at night on the beach. Hatchlings used to find the sea by detecting the bright horizon over the ocean, but artificial lights draw them away from the ocean. In Florida alone, millions of hatchlings die this way every year. Glare from artificial lights can prevent reproduction since artificial lights disrupt this nocturnal activity for many creatures. Birds that migrate or hunt by moonlight and starlight can wander off course. Millions of birds die needlessly every year, colliding with illuminated buildings and towers. They might migrate too early or too late and miss ideal climate conditions for nesting and foraging, dropping bird populations. Declining insect populations impact all species that rely on those insects for food or pollination, including us, because everything is connected, as we know. Number two, you might ask yourself, what about lighting and safety and crime? Well, a dark sky does not necessarily mean a dark ground. Smart lighting directs light where it needs to be and creates a balance between safety and light. And in reality, there's no scientific evidence that increased outdoor lighting prevents crimes. It may make us feel safer, but it has not shown to be making us safer. Outdoor lighting is intended to enhance safety and security at night, but too much lighting can have the opposite effect. Streetlights don't deter accidents or crime, but do cost a lot of money, according to a 2015 study by the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health. Visibility should always be the goal. Glare from bright, unshielded lights actually decreases safety because it shines into our eyes and can not only be blinding, it makes it difficult for our eyes to adjust to those natural low light conditions. Number three, lighting that emits too much light or shines when and where it's not needed is wasteful. Outdoor lighting should be fully shielded and directed downwards, not into the sky, providing the same level of illumination on the ground as unshielded ones, but with less energy and cost. It's just logical. Installing quality outdoor lighting could cut energy use by 60 to 70%. That is no joke. It has been estimated that 30% of all outdoor lighting in the US alone is completely wasted, mostly because these lights aren't shielded down. That adds up to over $3 billion and releases over 20 million tons of carbon into the atmosphere annually. Unnecessary indoor lighting, particularly in empty office buildings at night, should just be turned off. The good news is that light pollution, unlike many other forms of pollution, is reversible, and each one of us can make a difference. You can start minimizing the light from your own home. Easy. Follow these simple steps. Only use lights when and where it's needed. You could install motion detector lights and timers. Properly shield all outdoor lights and keep your blinds drawn at night to keep the light inside. Spread the word to your family and friends and tell them to pass it on. Many people either don't know or don't understand a lot about light pollution and the negative impacts. By explaining these issues to others, you'll bring awareness to this growing problem, and you can inspire others to make those necessary steps to protect our natural night sky. Learn more and do more. It's what we do here in Toastmasters. In conclusion, until recently, for all of human history, our ancestors experienced a sky brimming with stars, a night sky that inspired science, religion, philosophy, art, and literature, including some of Shakespeare's most famous sonnets. The natural night sky is our common and universal heritage, yet it's very rapidly becoming unknown to the next generations of our children. Vincent van Gogh said, "For my part, I know nothing with any certainty, but the sight of the stars makes me dream." Van Gogh painted this picture behind me, the famous Starry Night in Saint Remy, France in 1889. Now, the Milky Way cannot be seen from there. If he were alive today, would he still be inspired to paint Starry Night? We can all be a part of saving those starry nights, worth staying up late for. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Toastmaster Kate. And we are still doing really good on time. I wanted to go back to what Dr. Gerald said. I guess it's a Dave quote. To get the most out of Toastmasters, you can never get out of Toastmasters. I think that's an awesome quote. It reminds me of one of our members. His name is Kirk Akbay. He has a TEDx talk. He's got books. He's a public speaker and motivational coach. And I asked him the same question, and his answer as to why he comes to Toastmasters is my little speech I always give about Zig Ziglar saying the difference between a good speaker and a great speaker is about 1,000 speeches. And he just comes to Toastmasters to perfect it, even though he has his own TEDx talks. I think it's really great. And I didn't get a chance to ask Margot why she joined Toastmaster. Margot, why did you originally join Toastmasters?
Well, my story is a little more interesting. I was recently elected the president of the Barker Board of Education, and our superintendent was in Toastmasters, those of you who remember Judy Staples. And I had this problem where I would take 10 minutes of speech making or explaining or whatever I needed to do and do it in about a minute and a half. So she suggested I come with her. My mother had been in Toastmasters. My brother had gone to Toastmasters, and she dragged me to a meeting. And I did my first table topics, and I had enough material for a 7-minute speech, and I did it in 1 minute and 12 seconds. So that's what brought me to Toastmasters.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And we're going to move over to Mark, who might have some thoughts about, well, I talk about the one thing, and there's one game, but we won't go there. Anyways, Mark, why did you join Toastmasters? And would you like to introduce your speaker for this morning?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, good morning. In my case, I guess the seeds were sown, if you will, probably about 20 years ago in a mentoring meeting where a former director had recommended that I would probably benefit from Toastmasters. But I researched it a little bit, but I didn't really act upon it until a little bit later when I was newly promoted, but I was promoted on an acting basis. So you're basically auditioning for the job. And things were going well, but I had to give a readout and just an informal presentation. I didn't even have to stand up in front of the group, and it wasn't a big group. It was just my peers, maybe a dozen people, many of whom I had a great relationship with. And I stumbled. I was really nervous in that setting. And not that it was really that big of a deal, but it really clicked in my head afterward that it was a missed opportunity. And at that point, that's when I got serious about Toastmasters, and I got involved. So, and the rest, they say, is history. I've been here a long time, and I will never leave, because just like a muscle, the skills we learn in Toastmasters must be continually exercised or they will atrophy. And also, it's nice to think that maybe I'd be in a position to help some other people in their Toastmasters journey as well. But enough about me. Let's talk about our one-man band, Phil Russell, who is working from the Visionary Communication Pathway, Level 5 Elective Lessons Learned. His purpose. The purpose of this project is for the member to learn about and apply the skills needed to run a lessons learned meeting during a project or after its completion. The purpose of this speech is also for the member to share some aspect of his or her leadership experience and the impact of a lessons learned meeting. His time is 5 to 7 minutes, Mr. Toastmaster / timer. And do you have his title?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Toastmaster Mark. And please welcome Phil Russell. He is giving a speech called Living to 100 Whys. This is a fourth in his project. Go ahead, Phil. And you're muted.
Sorry about that, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, I guess. Don't start timing me yet. I want to answer your question as to why I got into Toastmasters. August of 1982 in Lockport, New York, my mother told me about an organizational meeting called Toastmasters. Now, when she was younger, her and my father, or my father and her, whichever is right, said they took what they call a Stroman course, but that was a ripoff of the Dale Carnegie course. And they did it because my mother, being a public health nurse and working with the Dale, wanted to perfect her public speaking. My father, he worked at a gas station, and she wanted him to cut down on his 4-letter word language, because in the gas station business, what you do is if it doesn't fit or isn't going right, you have to find the right word. Not as much the tool, because we know a bigger hammer is always better, but the right word. Now, in 1982, it started over at the old City Hall in Lockport on Pine Street, right near the Pine Street Bridge, and in the basement. And there was about 25 to 30 people there in the organizational meeting. It was in the Lockport paper. My mother told me about it. She said, this is what you might need, because I've been trying a number of things, and I was petrified of public speaking. Jack Fortin, who was the initial person, he's deceased now, he may have even said, if you get out of Toastmasters what you get out of Toastmasters, you'll never get out. He may have coined that, I don't know, but he usually had things that he learned from Toastmasters. And Jack got into it and started it back in 1982. And that was a noon group, a luncheon group. Since then, it split off into 3 other groups, which was a disaster. It became an evening group, a noon group, and an AM group. And the only one that survives is the AM group, because it was a advanced bunch. But for a while there, it struggled very badly, where sometimes I would be the only person at the meeting. I think you can relate to that, Dave. Until I met several people that got interested. One was Dave Licata, a few other people got in, and then Dave was Mr. I go out and find people. And he was the great salesman that developed it. But that's the long and the short of why I got into it. I was petrified. My first speech was a white knuckle. Just hang on to that and read every word verbatim. Since then, it's been a lot of fun learning how to speak, and I've enjoyed it ever since. So thank you so much for that time. Now, take a break for 2 seconds. Timer. Wisdom. Who has it? Wisdom. How do you get it? Wisdom. Where does it come from? Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, no guests? Well, in this project of living to 106, how do I get there? Now, remember, I started off with this by saying happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Well, this is my 4th speech culminating in it. It's not the finishing, because I only need one to finish the this portion, but I did it in 4 parts because there's 4 separate ideas here. And it's on wise, being wise, wisdom. Number 1, age, 82. Next year, I will have been in Toastmasters, 40 years? Is my math right? And that's a long time. And you hope that some wisdom comes with that. because I've seen what Toastmasters can do to people, help people, and it's grown and it's grown. Hopefully, I can become wiser with this, but not a wise guy. And Jackie knows for sure. She knows I could be a wise guy. But you hope, you hope that you impart wisdom on people and you keep the wise guy for just fun and jokes and leave it for that. Like I said, my first meeting was in 1982. Now, what happened then? Well, everybody wanted to speak because every speech was going to be an icebreaker. We got 20 members signed up, paid the dues, sent it in, we all got our manuals, and we started meeting out at the Worst Western at the time. And it was fun because you got to know people. Everyone was giving an icebreaker. And we had people like Jack and a couple of other experienced people to evaluate. And that worked out fine. And after you get through 20 speeches, what happens then? You wait for people to sign up. Guess what? Doesn't happen. Why? Because we all have that fear, no matter what. And we all procrastinate and we all stop and say, I don't want to do this. Then one person will do it. But once we started assigning those duties and had the format all set up for the future, it got better. Now remember, there's no one of us, no one person, and I learned this through my coaching. There's no one person bigger than the whole. I think they even had that in a Star Trek movie. One of Spock's pieces of wisdom was that not one person is bigger than the whole. And what's important is it takes all of these individuals put together to make the Toastmasters work. That's the part of wisdom that I have come up with. It's interesting because I see what can be done. We have a great challenge now. How is this going to work with this technology? Technology is not my forte, not at all. And public speaking now, it's just getting up and shooting the bull as far as I'm concerned, and you tell your stories and you try to put it together in a nice formatted way so people can understand it. What we need to do is keep putting people in the right place at the right time. And we need to have that so people aren't volunteering all the time. People just won't. Tom, you were in the military. What's the number one thing? Don't volunteer for anything. Right? Am I right? Am I right? Right. Okay, you got it. Don't volunteer for anything. I don't want to volunteer for anything. So that's why we need to make sure that every assignment is full, that we come together and we have every assignment is full and all of our meetings are action-packed. I have to give, I'll get this into when I get to my general evaluation, but David, you were handicapped today and 500 miles away and not knowing everybody in our group. Did a marvelous job. I'll repeat that again because I am very redundant in what I say. Now, wisdom in this Toastmastering comes together as we age, and we've been in it for a while because I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And David, you are experiencing just what we all experienced, and you've already done the one. Show up at a meeting and you're the only one there. Oh, then somebody shows up about 5 minutes or 20 minutes late. They say, oh, I'm here. So, okay, I'm going home. But it survives. And that one person is more important than that. Now, remember, wisdom. Who has it? How do you get it? Where does wisdom come from? Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Toastmaster Phil. And I will do the quick timers report for our pollster. I have Carol at 6 minutes and 21 seconds, Kate at 6 minutes and 47 seconds, and Phil at 6 minutes and 12 seconds. I believe they all have qualified. And back to me after we do our poll here. I believe I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting back over to Toastmaster Phil to be our general evaluator. Or do I introduce the evaluators?
You have the floor. And
Sure.
you can do whatever you want. You can call on me, or you can do it on your own.
I'll give you a 1 second break. I'll call on the evaluators.
All right.
And our first evaluator is Mr. Phil Russell. Take it away, Phil.
Oh, I have to, I muted myself and unmuted myself. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Carol Ann. There you are. You're over in the left-hand corner down below there. I like that opening. It was interesting to me. The reason being, I was in high school and we went to the World's Fair in New York City. First time I've ever, my parents said, yes, you need to go because they were there when they were young. And New York City is a marvelous place to go. I liked it. I the same way. I don't love it. It's too big for me. And there was a lot of things I liked and some things I can help you improve with, I think. Your vocal variety. You're very natural at that. Because I think being a nurse, I think you're a nurse that you're able to express yourself when you're talking with a patient. You know when it's serious, when you know when it'd be light. And that's important. You're very natural with this. But now in your sentence structure, you become, I too am guilty of this. I too am very guilty of this. I am choppy. It was pointed out to me by a person that taught Dale Carnegie. We need to speak in thought phrases, not break things up and then continue on, just like I just exampled. We need to speak in complete thought phrases. That will help you in your storytelling. Your stories, I liked it because it was real. It was absolutely real. One of the things they also have in here is eye contact. Well, it's very difficult with this technology, especially with you. That's one of the reasons you need to be in person, is because you can develop that eye contact when you're looking right at a person. I'm looking at this small picture of you, but not looking into the camera. And that's where the technology becomes difficult. And I think that you will develop that more once we get into in person. I felt you did have a good feeling for us because we have a couple of people that experienced and have lived in New York City. And with me going there, it brought my attention to it. Now, another area that I'd like to see you improve on, the opening grabbed me, but I felt you fell a little flat on the close. And that's the important thing, the close and the opening. People, you just fill in the middle and they'll listen to it. So work on that opening, grab their attention, close, and make sure they know what you're talking about. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Toastmaster Phil. And next up is going to be Toastmaster Tom giving an evaluation on Kate. Take it away, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. This morning, Katie gave part 2 of her speech. Now, this is going to sound a little bit like an inculquium, right? That's the way to say it, of her speech. She talked about light pollution. Well, it was clear she did the research. She did the preparation. She even had a background that tied into the close of her speech, so that throughout the speech, we're like, oh, she's got that background, Van Gogh. And she tied it in to the important thing that now he wouldn't even have seen that view. And that was kind of a good, impactful thing. You could tell that she practiced her speech. She had a good pace. And a lot of things that we didn't see, I'll cover in a second, but unless you were looking for them. Her gestures was one of my challenges to her. She counted on her fingers. She talked about down, were some of the ones that I definitely caught. She missed an opportunity maybe with the birds impacting a building maybe, or glare into your eyes. You know, that could have really hit the point home and you wouldn't have forgotten it. Her distance was understandable because she had her notes off to the side and up. Clearly, she referenced them because I was looking for it, but I don't think many other people would have noticed it unless you were looking for it. And unless you're looking for it, like our master, there was a lack of ums, so's, and ands. Again, showing practice. I liked that her eye contact was so much better. And again, I only noticed it because I was looking for it. Then one of the other things was to scope her speech for time. Now, to get your speech paced correctly, sometimes you prepare and you give a speech once or twice, and you think it's 5 to 6 minutes, and then it runs really long. Because you slow down and you wait for the things that you're saying to impact somebody else. And I'm going to say this as general advice to everybody else. If you're going to give a speech, give it to someone in person if you can, after you've maybe recorded it and looked at it yourself, because you'll know that the pauses will be longer. So 9 times out of 10, unless you're going off the cuff and off of a story, say, you're going to have to slow yourself down during the actual speech. Hopefully, Katie is able to do her next speech purposely designed to be a distance away and really interact during her speech. That's one thing I'd really like to see. With that, thank you, Katie, for another wonderful speech. Mr. Toastmaster or evaluator, whoever's got the meeting right now.
Thank you, Toastmaster Tom. And finally, we have Toastmaster Mark doing an evaluation on Phil Russell. Take it away, Tom. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Phil. Good morning once again. Phil, I really enjoyed your speech as the culmination of your happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise series of speeches. I also liked your bookending, opening, and closing. I thought that was a nice touch as well, because sometimes I think it's always a challenge to find the hook, the right words to open a speech and to close a speech. But let's talk about some of your strengths as a speaker. In an overarching way, Phil, and I've used this term before, you have a very impressive conversational style. The way you speak to the camera, use your gestures, your manner of speaking, the cadence, the phrasing of your speech, of your speaking style, and vocal variety feels more like we are just having a conversation over a beer, as opposed to you giving a presentation in a Zoom meeting or in a room. So in that way, all of those skills are just wonderful strengths that you possess. Now, building upon those strengths, I think your speech could have been even more effective in just a couple of ways. First, and this is a minor point, sort of Zoom specific point, looking at you and your background, there just feels to me like there's a little bit more background than there should be. Maybe alter your camera position a little bit. I guess take up more of the screen so that more emphasis is on you and nothing behind you becomes a distraction. Minor point. Second thing, eye contact on this speech, Phil, particularly in the beginning, you were looking down quite a bit, looking at your notes, gathering your thoughts. You got away with it a little better as the speech progressed, where you would slip them in, but it for you, it was very uncharacteristic. I've seen you give hip pocket speeches and you just let it fly and you're obviously don't have any notes. Today, it just seemed to be a little bit off the mark. So just something to work on for next time. But Phil, on behalf of the club, I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom. And here's to hoping that we continue to exhibit wisdom in this club and navigate our way through the challenging days ahead of us, Mr. Toastmaster. Now that concludes my evaluation, Mr. Toastmaster. However, I do have an addendum to my evaluation, and this one is for you since you seem to enjoy trolling me about the Mets and Yankees. Enough said. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let's see, I'm looking, oh, here we go. This is the World Series wins. No, this is the Yankees on this side. And here's the Mets on the, I printed this out just for you like a month ago, but just an observation. You definitely want to look at the 2000 though, when the Yankees played some team.
You do have 60 years of history on us, so I'll leave you with that.
Perfect. All right, now for the timers report, we had Phil at 3:06, Tom at 3:05, and Mark at about 2:15. I got distracted there, but all three qualified. All right, and we're still doing good on time. I'm going to leave our general evaluator for second to the last, just because I'm sure Phil has a few words to say. So I'd like to go ahead and start with our, let's see, this the trifecta. We've got word master, master, and grammarian. Take it away, Larry.
Well, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Today, I not only had the trifecta, but I was also working on the pick six, because I was doing the polls and Moklas had to leave, so I continued doing his tech and gesture. So I don't know where to begin, but I will start out with the Master report. The Master, and I'll tie it in with the grammar and everything else also. The Master report, I must say that today's meeting was done explicitly. So an encomium goes out to all of you on the word. The word got used earlier. I'll save that for the end, but on the ahs and the ums at the very beginning of the meeting, I think it was lack of coffee. There were a few by Thomas. Sylvia had a couple. Carol had a few throughout her speech. But the last 60 minutes did not hear a lot of ahs. Was the word of the day today. Not ah. In grammar, should I just roll right into them, David? Okay. As far as grammar, I did like, there was an I finally used an Jen used linguistic approach. I like that. That was very good. And also within the grammar, Thomas said, "What if everyone would just unmute?" I think everyone please unmute would have been perhaps the better way of saying that. You do get kudos though for singing. Menike's. We'll leave that at that. Margot, you were at the very beginning of the meeting. I know that you were explaining something and you were talking very fast and you were talking about being the quiz master today. And you said, "You never know what type of questions I will come up." You didn't finish your sentence. You forgot to say with on that. I finally caught Margot with something. Yes.
Would have been better if I said, I will create.
I will create.
That would have been grammatically correct. I can't end the sentence with the word with.
The other thing that, that's true. So I was corrected on my grammar correction. The other thing though, let me ask you a question. You did say a little more interesting. I looked that up to see if that was grammatically correct. And we'll give you a pass because there's nowhere that says it wasn't or was.
It could be just a little bit.
A little bit more. Yes. And then Jackie, let me see. Jackie, I loved your quote, which was the Smedley. If you get out of Toastmasters, excellent quote. I love that. Eric said more better should be is better, or something to the such. A bit of difficulty. Let me see. Carol Ann, I enjoyed your speech because you did not use a lot of filler words, where normally you would have used some filler words. When you got to a certain point, you did pause. You had a couple of uncomfortable, it looked like pauses, but you regained your thought and you continued without adding any words or anything in there, which I thought was quite well. David, you said that you were elected on the board. I think you were elected to the board, if I'm not mistaken on that. And Kate, great grammar throughout and during your speech. I did like Mark. Mark used some wonderful words today. He used culmination, cadence, navigate, addendum. He also said the seeds were sown is the reason that he joined Toastmasters. And I think with that also, the seeds were sown when you and David had the throwdown, because you were prepared with showing the standings, but David had a great comeback because he did have the World Series wins. So you both get the Tech and Gesture Award for that. And let me see if I had anything else. David wins the Gesture and Tech Award for the day as our Toastmaster because he had the thinker look today. And with that, back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mr.
I think I hit on
Everything.
all of the things I.
Yeah, I was just thinking you pretty much did all the roles. We will do Quizmaster last. I'm going to go ahead to our general evaluator and see if Phil has any thoughts. I'm not sure if he does or not. But take it away, Toastmaster Phil.
Thank you, David. Let me start off with saying that one of the things that David and I did, we communicated as to what was going to happen. We had a lot of questions as to whether I should do these 3 roles or not. I communicated with David. It was all set up. But that's what you need to do, is set things up so they succeed. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. And there was nobody else going to jump in. And I said, I've done this before. He's done it before. We've all done it before. And we need to step it up. Now, we had 13 people here, and I thought David did an amazing job under a very difficult situation. Not all roles were filled. And as I have said before, when you're a Toastmaster, you get 3 speakers and 3 evaluators, 4. Okay, you get 3 of them, and it all fills in. Once you have all those roles filled, 3 speakers, 3 evaluators, everything else will fill in. But we need to have all those roles filled. Now, that's for David. I thought he did a marvelous job under a very difficult situation. Oh, I am using notes because I am trying to read my notes, because if I didn't take notes during my general evaluation, I had to do it on David. Now I have to do it on the evaluators. Let me tell you, the first evaluator, he was outstanding. He was so great. He did everything correctly. What a great job he did. Not. What am I doing? And what's that word called? Encom. You know, Latin and I never got along really well. Encomium. Is that right? Encomium. So I'm giving encomium to myself. But I also wanted to give it out to our other evaluators, because they did a great job. One of the best things that we do in Toastmasters is evaluation. Most important. Reason being, we want to give positive feedback. Start off with something positive. Tom did it. Mark did it. End it. You get opening and closing. That's so important. And when you do that, you have a good opening, a good closing. Then you can fill in the middle. And in evaluations, you want to fill in with something that can help them improve. It is so important that people can improve, and how to improve. Mark helped me out. I know Tom will help out Katie. And I hope I did some help for Carol. because this Toastmastering thing and public speaking is not the easiest. And that's why people won't sign up, because the fear, we all have it. What's the number one fear? Even before death, even before taxes, the two things that are constant, death and taxes. And what's the greatest fear? Public speaking and leadership. So that's why I feel that all three evaluators hopefully did give some constructive feedback, because that's most important. As far as the total meeting, for 13, 14 people, worked out fine. Mr. Toast, I'll turn back over to you, Mr. Toastmaster, and let you go have a run with it.
Thank you, Toastmaster Phil. I'd like to go to Margot, and she is our quiz master, and see if she has any quizzes for us.
Sure. So we had a second theme for today, and that theme was the arts. So we had some music and some art questions. So there's a so for you, Edna, in your memory. Tom had a song. What was the original song that Tom was attempting to sing? And I can't throw stones because I'm an off-key monotone.
A Spoonful of Sugar from Mary
Thank you.
Poppins.
Thank you. Carol Ann lost her luggage, but she did mention a song within her. After she mentioned that, the next thing was a song. What song did Carol Ann mention today?
It's a Small World.
It's a Small World. And Kate, of course, featured an artist. What artist and what year was that painting painted?
And go.
Go.
1889.
A long time ago.
Very good, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. I had fun as a Toastmaster. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our president, Thomas, to close us out.
Thank you, Dave. Everyone, give the wavy hands for Dave. Thank you so much. Learn more about Toastmasters all the time and every day. And I see how once you're in Toastmasters, you never leave. And I understand why after just a short period of time. Well, I'd like to start with asking Dr. Stevens. I know that he's Toastmaster next week, and I believe that he has a theme, and we'd love to hear what your theme is for next week.
Thank you so much. Word gets around quickly in Toastmasters, apparently. My theme is donuts. I don't think anybody's talked about donuts yet. I could be wrong. And I have a lot of material and experience with the topic. So I'd like to share some of that.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens. I have over 100 pounds worth of experience with donuts, at least still remaining. So that is amazing. I'm going to definitely think about that and see what my role is for next week, which to everybody, please be in the next few minutes after the meeting ends, go and look at next week. Make sure that you know what your roles are. Sign up if there's an open role. Let's go ahead and make sure that we have all the roles filled for next week. And I'm sure Dr. Stevens is going to bug people if they aren't filled, and let us know with emails how that's going. I'd like to jump to the winners for the day. For table topics, Jackie Kenny. Jackie Kenny wins for this morning's table topics. Our evaluator for today, Mark Campos, headset man there. I love the cars going by in the background. It actually does add to your, I don't care if anyone says it's a bad thing. It always makes your background interesting to see a little bit of movement and seeing people waking up in the morning. I like it. And our speaker of the day with a part 2 speech, of course, Katie Orr. Katie, thank you for a wonderful second part speech. Our hybrid meetings are going through their test drive phase. And we'll be doing the test drives, and we'll be able to talk about that next meeting, and we can answer some questions immediately following the meeting. At this time, I'll open it up for any announcements that anyone wishes to give. Going once, going twice, closed. All right, that's our announcements. Thank you everyone for being here, and that is the end of this week's meeting.